Where History is Alive Volume 2 contains 18 more segments telling the stories of Marshall, Michigan through its historical markers and monuments. Each segment features someone who currently lives or works in the Marshall area, explaining a connection with the subject of the marker or monument. There is also a special feature with James Craycraft portraying the Reverend Montgomery Schuyler delivering the 1864 dedication sermon at Trinity Episcopal Church. This video project again draws on the resources of the Marshall Historical Society and includes the involvement of its board members.
Hi, I'm Nate Palmer, Assistant Director of the Marshall District Library and lifelong fan of one of Marshall's most famous authors, John Bellairs. One side of the state historical marker in front of the Cronin home on Madison Street honors John Bellairs. The house was the inspiration for one of Bellairs' most famous books, The House with the Clock in Its Walls. Born in Marshall on January 17, 1938, John Bellairs was the award-winning best-selling author of 15 acclaimed Gothic mystery novels for young adults. Bellairs would frequently pass by this house as a boy. In fact, the bicycle he rode at the time is actually on display at the Marshall Historical Museum at the GAR Hall. The marker has a quote from the author. "In my imagination, I repeatedly walk up and down the streets of beautiful Michigan town where I grew up. It is full of Victorian mansions and history, and it would work on the creative mind of any kid." When he began writing books, Bellairs adapted many of Marshall's streets, buildings, and surroundings to fit his stories. Landmarks in John Bellairs' books included places like the American Museum of Magic, Schuler's Restaurant, the Brooks Memorial Fountain, and of course, the Cronin House. Bellairs attended the University of Notre Dame and the University of Chicago. Through the later years, he settled in Haverhill, Massachusetts. He would still frequently visit the three generations of families still in Marshall. In 1989, Ann LaPietra, noted citizen of Marshall and owner of the Kids Place bookstore, started the John Bellairs Walk. Each year during Michigan Week, students from Marshall and the surrounding communities would take a tour of Marshall, stopping at the landmarks that were included in the Bellairs books. Local volunteers would dress up as characters from the books and teach students about the history of the neighborhoods in Marshall. This annual event lasted until 2006. If you are interested in a self-guided walking tour, maps and information are available at the Marshall District Library. We are currently in the process of redeveloping a formal event. Bellairs described Marshall, Michigan well when he had Louis Barnevelt say in the book, The House with the Clock in Its Wall, "To begin with, the town was marvelous. It was the sort of place he had always wanted to live. It was full of tall, elaborate, and decorated old houses. Even the ordinary white framed houses had things that made them seem different. A stained glass window, or a bouquet of iron flowers on top of a cupola. And so many of the houses seemed to be hiding secrets. Marshall is a town full of literary history, but the most magical of these stories were written by John Bellairs."